The massive training hall at the Galactic Defense Academy buzzed with excitement. 200 young aliens from 47 different worlds sat in rows, their eyes fixed on the giant screen at the front. Some had forearms, others had blue skin that glowed softly in the dim light. A few looked like walking rocks, while others seemed to be made of crystal that caught and reflected the light. Commander Zek stood at the front of the room. His forearms moved as he spoke, pointing to different parts of the screen. He was tall and thin, with smooth purple skin and large black eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "Today we begin something new," he said, in a voice that carried to every corner of the room. "We will study the humans. They are new to our galaxy. They have asked to join our alliance of peaceful worlds," the cadets whispered among themselves. Most had heard stories about the humans who had arrived 3 months ago. They seemed friendly enough. Their ships were fast but not very big. Their weapons looked basic compared to what other species had built. They appeared to be just another young species taking their first steps into the larger galaxy. In the front row, Yeath sat next to her study partner, Grex. Yeath had blue skin that you could almost see through, and she was known for being one of the smartest cadets in her class. Grex was built like a small mountain with gray, rocky skin and arms that could crush metal. Despite his scary appearance, he was gentle and kind. "The humans seem nice," Yeath whispered to Grex. "Their ambassadors have been very polite." Grex nodded his heavy head. "They helped fix our water system last week, and they shared their food with everyone in the dining hall." Both cadets remembered the humans well. Colonel Jake Patterson was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He always asked about their families and remembered everyone's names. Dr. Lisa Morgan was younger, with brown hair and a smile that made everyone feel welcome. She had spent hours teaching alien cadets how to play human games and answering questions about Earth. "The humans have given us recordings of their wars," Commander Zex continued. "We will watch these to understand how they fight. This will help us decide if they can work with our peacekeeping forces." A young cadet named Nix raised one of his tentacles. "Commander, the humans don't seem like fighters. They've been nothing but friendly since they arrived." Many cadets made sounds of agreement. The humans had been model guests. They learned alien languages quickly, shared their knowledge freely, and showed genuine interest in every species they met. Colonel Patterson stepped forward from where he had been standing at the side of the room. His face became serious and the friendly smile disappeared. "Cadets, I thank you for your kind words about our people," he said slowly. "But I must warn you. The videos you are about to see show humans at our worst. We are not proud of these times, but understanding our past is important if you want to understand who we are today." Dr. Morgan touched her tablet, and the screen came to life. "We have organized these recordings from oldest to newest," she explained. "Each video includes information about what was happening and why the fighting started." The lights dimmed, and the first images appeared on the screen. Ancient human warriors in bronze armor charged at each other with spears and swords. The alien cadets watched with professional interest, taking notes on how the humans formed lines and used their weapons. "Basic but organized," muttered Tell, an insect-like alien whose many eyes could track multiple things at once. Similar to how the Borvak clans fought in their early days. As the videos continued through history, showing medieval battles and early gunpowder wars, the cadets remained interested but not impressed. The technology was crude by galactic standards, and the tactics were similar to what other young species had used. Then the 20th century began. The first sign of trouble came when videos of World War I trenches appeared on the screen. The destruction seemed too big for such simple weapons, but what disturbed the more sensitive aliens was the look in the human soldiers' eyes. "Notice their expressions," Dr. Morgan said quietly. "This is what we call the 1,000-yard stare. It happens when a mind sees more horror than it can handle, but the person keeps fighting anyway." Yeath felt her breathing get faster. Her people had evolved from peaceful plant eaters and had never developed the ability to handle violence. How do they keep fighting when their minds are breaking? "They adapt," Colonel Patterson replied simply. "Humans are very good at adapting." This Videos shifted to World War II, and the alien cadets began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. The sheer size of human conflict was becoming clear. Entire continents were at war. Cities were turned to rubble. Millions died. But it was the footage from the Pacific battles that caused the first walkout. Images of Iwo Jima played on the screen. Humans charged across beaches of black volcanic sand while explosions erupted around them. Wounded soldiers dragged themselves forward to keep fighting. Medics ran into gunfire to reach fallen comrades. The raw determination was unlike anything the aliens had seen. Cadet Plix, a member of the peaceful Etherian species, stood up suddenly and left the room. His people had never developed the ability to process such violence. The videos get more intense, Dr. Morgan warned. We can stop if needed. Commander Zek studied the remaining timestamps with growing concern. How much more is there? We have prepared about 8 hours of material, Colonel Patterson said. This covers major conflicts through what we call the global war on terror. It ends with our final Earth-based conflict before we achieved space travel. 8 hours. The alien cadets looked at each other with growing understanding. If this was still early in human history, what horrors were yet to come? As the World War II footage continued, showing human soldiers fighting in jungles, deserts, and frozen wastelands with poor supplies and terrible odds, more cadets began to show signs of distress. The Selenians, who were very sensitive to emotions, were particularly affected. 3 more left during footage of urban combat in Stalingrad, unable to process images of humans fighting room by room through the ruins of their own cities. Commander Zex called for a break. The remaining cadets sat in stunned silence. Many stared at Colonel Patterson and Dr. Morgan with new expressions. Not fear exactly, but a growing understanding that they had completely misunderstood what humanity represented. Colonel, Zek said carefully, this level of constant warfare is unprecedented in our records. Most species either destroy themselves or evolve beyond such conflict within a few generations. How did humanity survive its own military development? Patterson exchanged a look with Dr. Morgan before answering. Commander, what you have seen so far represents roughly 10% of the material we have prepared, and these are our older conflicts, before our weapons became truly devastating. In the silence that followed, Grex, whose people prided themselves on being warriors, asked the question that would haunt the Academy for years to come. If this is how humans fight wars, how did they ever achieve peace? Dr. Morgan smiled sadly. Who said we achieved peace? We simply stopped fighting each other and started looking to the stars instead. The break ended, but 12 cadets did not return to their seats. They had seen enough to know they did not want to see more. As the remaining cadets filed back into the auditorium, Yith caught Colonel Patterson's eye. Colonel, are there more videos like this? Much more, he replied quietly. And I'm afraid they only get worse from here. The giant screen flickered back to life and the education of the alien cadets continued. But now they understood they were not just learning about human military history. They were learning about a species that had turned warfare into an art form, refined it through centuries of conflict, and somehow managed to survive their own deadly expertise. Outside the Academy, word was already spreading through the alien community. The humans were not what they appeared to be. Beneath their friendly smiles and helpful nature lay something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The question now was not whether humanity could join the Galactic Alliance. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity. The second day of footage began with what Dr. Morgan called modern warfare. The Korean conflict, Vietnam, and the proxy wars of the late 20th century filled the giant screen. By now, word had spread throughout the Academy. Several teachers had joined the viewing, their faces grim with concern. Yith had barely slept. Her dreams were filled with images of human soldiers marching through fire. She noticed that Colonel Patterson's hands sometimes shook during certain parts of the videos. She began to understand that these were not just old recordings to him. They were memories of his people's pain. The footage of Vietnam helicopter attacks played across the screen. The alien cadets watched in horror as humans jumped from flying machines into dangerous territory, knowing many would not survive the landing. Look at their tactical flexibility, Commander Zex noted, trying to stay focused on military lessons. They change their strategies in the middle of battle based on what happens. But Nix was not thinking about tactics. They are so young, he whispered, watching 18-year-old human soldiers walking through thick jungle. Barely adults, and they are doing this. He could not finish his thought. The idea of sending their youth into such horror made no sense to most galactic species. In their worlds, military service was done by mature adults after years of mental preparation. Dr. Morgan paused the video. Many of these soldiers were forced to serve against their will. Others volunteered for different reasons. Some felt it was their duty. Others needed money. Some came from military families. They fought without choosing to? Tell's many eyes grew wide. How do unwilling warriors stay effective? Fear, training, and loyalty to the soldiers next to them, Colonel Patterson replied. Humans rarely fight for big ideas when the shooting starts. They fight for the person beside them. The video continued, showing medics running toward wounded soldiers while enemies shot at them. Yith watched in amazement as humans repeatedly risked their lives to save strangers, often dying in the process. This behavior seems contradictory, said Professor Keth, a military expert who had joined the viewing. They show extreme violence and remarkable compassion at the same time. It is not contradictory, Dr. Morgan explained. It is human. We are capable of terrible violence when we think it is necessary, but we are also capable of great sacrifice for what we love. The footage shifted to urban combat in different conflicts: Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan. The alien viewers watched human soldiers fighting in places that most galactic species would have abandoned, cities reduced to rubble, desert storms that blocked all vision, mountains where every rock could hide an enemy. What disturbed the cadets most was not the violence itself. It was the methodical way humans adapted to impossible situations. When their equipment broke, they fixed it with whatever they could find. When cut off from help, they kept fighting. When wounded, they treated themselves and continued. How do they maintain mental stability? Asked Vorth, a crystal being whose people healed trauma through group therapy. Where are their support systems? Colonel Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Often there are none. We call it shell shock, battle fatigue, or post-traumatic stress. Many humans are permanently damaged by war, but they serve anyway. Permanently damaged? Commander Zex stopped the video completely. You mean they accept mental injury as a normal cost of military service? For most of human history, yes. We have only recently begun to understand and treat combat trauma properly. 15. More cadets left during the Iraq footage. The combination of urban warfare, hidden bombs, and watching young humans deal with injuries that would kill most species was too much for their minds to handle. But it was the Afghanistan footage that broke the remaining cadets. Composure. Images of human soldiers fighting in mountain passes, carrying wounded friends for miles through enemy territory, continuing operations despite poor supplies and overwhelming odds. It painted a picture of a species that simply refused to quit no matter the cost. They do not retreat, whispered Professor Keth. Even when it would make tactical sense, they hold positions that should be abandoned. Human military doctrine includes something called leave no one behind, Dr. Morgan explained. It means exactly what it sounds like. The footage showed a rescue operation where dozens of humans risked their lives to recover the bodies of dead comrades from enemy territory. Not to save the living, to get back the dead for proper burial. Grex, whose warrior culture valued strength above all else, stared in disbelief. They risk the living for the dead? A human's duty to their fellow soldiers does not end with death, Colonel Patterson said quietly. We bring them home. By the end of the second day, only 47 cadets remained of the original 200. The others had either left on their own or been removed by medical staff due to mental distress. Commander Zex faced a crisis unlike any in the Academy's history. The viewing sessions were supposed to last 5 days, covering human military development through their space age. But they had only finished pre-space conflicts, and already 3/4 of his cadets were too traumatized to continue. "Colonel Patterson," he said during the evening break, "I must ask, does the warfare become less intense as humans develop better technology?" Patterson and Dr. Morgan looked at each other in a way that answered the question before either spoke. "Commander," Dr. Morgan said gently, "tomorrow we show them nuclear warfare, automated weapon systems, and orbital bombardment capabilities. The scale of destruction increases greatly. And the day after that? Space-based conflicts. Ship-to-ship combat, planetary sieges, and what we call sterilization campaigns against hostile species." Commander Zex felt his main heart skip a beat. Sterilization campaigns, complete elimination of hostile life forms from contested worlds, Colonel Patterson explained. "We have never had to use such tactics against thinking species, but the capability exists. The footage shows training exercises and computer simulations." The few remaining cadets had been listening to this conversation with growing horror. Yeath approached Dr. Morgan with shaking hands. "Doctor, how many humans died in all these conflicts combined?" Dr. Morgan checked her tablet. "Military deaths alone exceed 100 million. Civilian deaths are roughly 10 times that number." 1 billion humans died in warfare? Nix's voice was barely a whisper. "That is a conservative estimate. It does not include deaths from disease, starvation, and displacement caused by military conflicts." The remaining cadets sat in stunned silence. 1 billion deaths represented more than the total population of most galactic species. Yet humanity had not only survived such losses but had grown strong, eventually achieving space travel and asking to join the galactic community. "There is something else," Colonel Patterson added reluctantly. "The billion deaths I mentioned, those are from conflicts between humans. It does not include our wars against non-human species during our expansion phase." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of 3 more cadets quietly leaving the room. Yith raised her hand slowly. "Colonel, when humans fight non-human species, how do those conflicts usually end?" Patterson's face grew very serious. "With the complete military defeat of our enemies. We have never lost a war against a non-human species." "Never?" Commander Zex asked. "Never. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it costs us greatly. But humans do not accept defeat. We adapt, we learn, and we find a way to win." Dr. Morgan added, "The species we have fought against no longer exist as military threats. Some joined us peacefully after their defeat. Others were relocated to preserve galactic peace. A few chose extinction rather than surrender." The remaining cadets tried to process this information. Humanity had not just survived centuries of warfare against their own kind. They had also fought wars against alien species and had never lost, not once. "How many alien species has humanity fought?" asked Tell. 17 conflicts of various scales, Colonel Patterson replied, ranging from small territorial disputes to full-scale extinction wars. Extinction wars? Wars where the losing side faces complete destruction, usually because they attacked human civilian populations or refused all diplomatic solutions. Professor Keth, who had studied military history for decades, asked the question that was forming in everyone's mind. "Colonel, in your assessment, could humanity defeat the combined military forces of the current Galactic Alliance?" Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Professor, that question assumes we would fight you as enemies rather than defend you as allies. But to answer your question directly, yes. If humanity faced an existential threat from the Galactic Alliance, we would find a way to survive it." The confidence in his voice was chilling. This was not bragging or empty posturing. It was a simple statement of fact from someone whose species had proven it over and over across centuries of conflict. That night, 5 more cadets requested transfers to non-military programs. They had decided they never wanted to understand warfare at the level humans had mastered. As the remaining cadets prepared for the 3rd day of footage, they knew they were no longer just learning about military history. They were discovering that their peaceful galaxy was about to welcome its most dangerous inhabitants. On the 3rd morning, only 23 cadets came to the viewing room. Word had spread throughout the Academy that the human military footage was unlike anything in galactic records. Some called it educational, others called it traumatic. But everyone agreed it was changing how the Academy viewed humanity forever. Dr. Morgan had spent the night reviewing the remaining footage, trying to find a way to present it that would not completely destroy the cadets' understanding of warfare. She had decided there was no gentle way to show what humans were truly capable of. Today we examine 20th century technological warfare, she announced to the small group of remaining cadets. This includes nuclear weapons, chemical warfare, and automated weapons systems. Commander Zex raised a hand. Dr. Morgan, before we continue, I must ask, have any galactic species developed similar weapons? Not to our knowledge. Most species either destroy themselves while experimenting with such weapons or achieve wisdom that prevents their development. Humans are unique because we developed them, used them, survived them, and then chose to limit their use, rather than abandon them completely. The first footage showed nuclear testing. Desert landscapes vaporized in seconds. Mushroom clouds rising kilometers into the atmosphere. Underground bunkers designed to survive planetary bombardment. Tell's entire body went rigid. Those are city killers. Planet killers. Yes, Colonel Patterson confirmed. At the height of the Cold War, humanity possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy Earth's surface several times over. Cold War? Asked Professor Keth, who had continued attending despite his obvious distress. A 40-year period when the two most powerful human nations aimed thousands of these weapons at each other, but never used them. It was warfare through the threat of mutual destruction. The idea of deliberately creating weapons too terrible to use, then spending decades in a standoff while building more of them, was so alien to galactic thinking that several cadets began showing signs of mental breakdown. But the footage of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was what finally broke most of them. The before and after images played across the screen. Thriving cities reduced to ash and shadows. Dr. Morgan spoke in a carefully neutral voice, explaining the strategic decisions, the estimated casualties, the long-term effects of radiation poisoning. Yeath stood up suddenly. They used these weapons on their own species? On enemy civilian populations during wartime, Colonel Patterson clarified. Civilian populations? Her voice cracked. Non-combatants? The line between combatant and non-combatant becomes blurred during total war, Dr. Morgan explained. The targets were chosen for their strategic and psychological impact. Yith stared at the images of human children affected by radiation poisoning. Their faces burned, their futures destroyed. How do the humans live with this knowledge? How do they function knowing their species is capable of such acts? The same way we function knowing we are capable of love, creativity, and sacrifice. Colonel Patterson replied. Humans contain contradictions. We are capable of great evil and great good, sometimes at the same time. 8 more cadets left during the nuclear warfare segment. Among them was Grex, whose warrior culture had no framework for understanding, weapons that killed without discrimination across generations. The remaining 15 cadets watched footage of chemical warfare. Soldiers advancing through poison gas protected only by basic masks, stepping over the bodies of those who had fallen. The systematic nature of it, the way humans had industrialized death itself, was more disturbing than the raw violence they had seen before. We developed assembly line manufacturing for instruments of war, Dr. Morgan noted. Mass production techniques that could outfit millions of soldiers and produce thousands of vehicles, aircraft, and weapon systems. You industrialized warfare itself, Commander Zex observed with horrified fascination. We industrialized everything, Colonel Patterson replied, including death. The footage shifted to Vietnam-era automated weapon systems, motion sensors that triggered explosive devices, remote-operated guns that fired without human oversight, early drone technology that could kill from vast distances. The logical conclusion of this technological development, Dr. Morgan continued, was the removal of human decision-making from the killing process itself. She showed them footage of modern drone warfare. Operators sitting in comfortable chairs thousands of kilometers from the battlefield, watching targets through high-resolution cameras, pressing buttons that launched missiles with pinpoint accuracy. They have made war comfortable, whispered Nix, who had somehow endured everything up to this point. They can kill without risking themselves, without even seeing their enemies face to face. Yet they still choose to send soldiers into direct combat, Professor Keth observed. Even with these remote capabilities, humans continue to fight in person. Because, Colonel Patterson explained, certain military objectives require human judgment, human adaptability, and human willingness to accept risk for uncertain gain. The final segment of the day's footage showed near-future human warfare. Soldiers wearing powered armor that made them stronger and faster. Computer systems that helped them make tactical decisions. Weapons that could level city blocks with surgical precision. The technology was advanced enough that the galactic species could finally understand the principles, but that only made it more terrifying. These were not primitive humans struggling with crude weapons. These were sophisticated warriors using technology that rivaled galactic standards, applied with a ruthlessness that exceeded anything in galactic military history. Tomorrow, Dr. Morgan announced as the lights came up, we will examine humanity's first interstellar conflicts and our theoretical frameworks for large-scale space warfare. 5 more cadets quietly gathered their belongings and left. Among them was Professor Keth, whose extensive military knowledge had been shattered by the realization that his species' most advanced warfare concepts were basic compared to human military thinking. Commander Zex found himself alone with 10 cadets, facing the prospect of 2 more days of footage that would apparently make everything they had seen seem mild by comparison. Colonel Patterson, he said carefully, I must ask, when humanity petitioned to join our alliance, were we aware of your military capabilities? You were provided with complete technical specifications of our weapon systems, fleet capabilities, and strategic doctrines, Patterson replied. Everything we have shown you is part of the public record we submitted with our application, but not the historical context. You did not ask about the historical context. You asked about our current capabilities and our intentions. We answered both questions honestly. Commander Zex reviewed his notes from humanity's application process. They had indeed provided complete technical data, but the dry specifications had not conveyed the sheer horror of how those capabilities had been developed and refined through centuries of increasingly destructive warfare. What are your intentions, now? He asked. Colonel Patterson stood, his posture shifting into something the remaining cadets were beginning to recognize as a command stance. To defend our allies, to explore the galaxy, and to ensure that the horrors we have inflicted on ourselves are never visited upon any other species. And if diplomatic solutions fail, then we will do what humans have always done. We will adapt, we will endure, and we will win. The simple certainty in his voice was perhaps more chilling than anything they had seen in the footage. This was not bragging or posturing. It was a statement of fact delivered by someone whose species had proven it over and over across centuries of conflict. Yith raised her hand slowly. Colonel, you said you want to ensure these horrors are never visited upon other species. But what if other species visit them upon you? Patterson's expression grew very cold. Then those species will learn why we developed these capabilities in the first place. You would use everything we have seen against alien enemies? We would use whatever is necessary to protect humanity and our allies. Nothing more, nothing less. Dr. Morgan added quietly. The weapons and tactics you have seen were developed for use against humans, who are remarkably difficult to kill and even more difficult to defeat. Most alien species are considerably more fragile than we are. The II implication hung in the air like a threat. Humanity had spent centuries learning to fight the most dangerous enemy they knew themselves. Any alien species that chose to fight them would face weapons and tactics designed to defeat an enemy far more resilient than they were. That night, 3 more cadets requested transfers to non-military academic tracks. They had decided they never wanted to be in a position where they might have to fight humans or, perhaps worse, fight alongside them. As the 7 remaining cadets prepared for the 4th day of footage, they understood they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. They were watching the military education of a species that had turned warfare into a science, refined it through centuries of practice, and then chosen to share that knowledge with potential allies. The question was no longer whether humanity belonged in the Galactic Alliance. The question was whether the galaxy was prepared for what humanity brought with them. Only 7 cadets remained for the 4th day of footage. The Academy's medical staff had been placed on high alert, and several mind healers had been called in to provide support for the participants. The viewing had become less of an educational exercise and more of an endurance test. Commander Zex had spent the night reviewing galactic military protocols and realized that humanity's application to join the Alliance represented the first time a species with such advanced military capabilities had sought membership. Every other species had either achieved space travel through peaceful means or had been pacified through diplomatic contact before developing truly dangerous weapons. Today we examine humanity's transition to space-based warfare, Dr. Morgan announced to the tiny group. This includes our first interstellar conflicts, orbital bombardment capabilities, and theoretical frameworks for large-scale galactic warfare. The remaining cadets sat in grim silence. Yith, Nix, Tell, and 4 others whose species had particularly strong mental defenses had made it this far through sheer determination, but all showed signs of strain. The footage began with humanity's first space battles, conflicts in the outer solar system over mining rights and territorial claims. The alien cadets watched human fleets engaging in 3-dimensional combat, using the vacuum of space itself as a weapon. Notice their tactical adaptation, Commander Zex observed, trying to maintain academic focus. They have translated atmospheric warfare principles to zero-gravity, 3-dimensional combat. But it was the scale of destruction that horrified the viewers. When human ships were damaged beyond repair, their crews often chose to ram enemy vessels rather than surrender. When space stations were threatened, defenders would blow up their own life support systems to deny resources to attackers. They would rather die than lose, whispered Yith. They would rather die than let their enemies win, Colonel Patterson corrected. There is a difference. The footage showed the first interstellar conflict, humanity's war against what they called the Silicon Collective, an artificial intelligence that had achieved consciousness and attempted to claim several star systems. The human response had been swift and absolute. We classified it as an extinction-level threat, Dr. Morgan explained as the footage showed human fleets systematically destroying every Silicon Collective installation across multiple star systems. Our response was proportional to the threat. You destroyed an entire artificial species? Commander Zex's voice was barely controlled. We eliminated a hostile AI that was attempting to sterilize human colonies. Every diplomatic attempt was met with attacks on civilian populations. The footage showed the final battle, human ships pursuing the last Silicon Collective vessels into a nebula, hunting them down one by one until none remained. The methodical nature of the campaign, the way humans had tracked down and eliminated every trace of their enemies across light years of space, demonstrated a capacity for sustained warfare that exceeded anything in galactic records. How long did this campaign last? Asked Tell. 18 years, Colonel Patterson replied. 18 years of interstellar warfare, conducted across multiple star systems, with no prisoners taken and no mercy given. The remaining cadets tried to process the implications. Humanity had fought a war of extermination across galactic distances and had sustained it for nearly 2 decades. But the most disturbing footage was yet to come. Dr. Morgan introduced the next segment. Theoretical warfare scenarios developed by human military strategists. These represent conflicts that have never occurred, but for which we maintain detailed battle plans. The footage showed war games and simulations. Humanity's plans for defending against galactic invasion, conquering hostile star systems, and fighting multiple species simultaneously across vast distances. The strategies were comprehensive, accounting for different alien physiologies, technological capabilities, and tactical doctrines. Humans had spent decades developing plans for wars that might never happen. against enemies that might never exist. This is the Scorched Galaxy Protocol, Dr. Morgan explained as the simulation showed human fleets systematically destroying every habitable world in a contested region. If we cannot hold territory, we ensure no one else can use it. You would sterilize entire sectors? Commander Zex's main heart was racing. Only as a last resort, against an extinction-level threat to humanity. Colonel Patterson's voice was steady. But yes, we have the capability and the will to deny our enemies the benefits of victory. The final simulation was labeled Total War Protocols. Humanity's plans for fighting the entire Galactic Alliance simultaneously. The strategy involved using humanity's industrial capacity to overwhelm enemy fleets through sheer production volume, while simultaneously attacking enemy homeworlds to prevent coordinated resistance. You have planned for war against all of us, Yeath said numbly. We have planned for every possible conflict scenario, Dr. Morgan corrected, including defending against Galactic Alliance forces if diplomatic relations break down. But you applied to join us, and we hope to remain allies forever. But hope is not a strategy. The remaining cadets sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Humanity had requested to join the Galactic Alliance while simultaneously maintaining detailed plans for conquering it. They had provided complete technical specifications of their capabilities while keeping their strategic doctrines confidential. They had presented themselves as peaceful explorers while revealing themselves to be the most militarily advanced species in galactic history. There is one more thing, Colonel Patterson said quietly. Everything we have shown you. The historical footage, the current capabilities, the strategic planning. This represents only our conventional military forces. Only conventional? Commander Zex felt his secondary heart beginning to flutter. We have not discussed our special operations capabilities, our intelligence services, or our classified weapons programs. Those remain restricted information. The silence that followed was broken by Nix's quiet question. How much of humanity's technology have you shared with us? Dr. Morgan consulted her tablet. Approximately 40% of our non-classified capabilities. We have withheld information that we consider too dangerous for general galactic use. Too dangerous for us to know about? Too dangerous for anyone to know about, including most humans. 2 more cadets left during the break. The psychological pressure of understanding that humanity possessed military capabilities beyond what they had already revealed was too much for their species' mental frameworks to process. The remaining 5 cadets returned for the final segments of the day's footage. They watched in horrified fascination as human military theorists discussed scenarios that would have been dismissed as impossible by galactic strategic thinkers. War across multiple galaxies, conflicts lasting thousands of years, the complete transformation of star systems into weapons platforms, the engineering of viruses that could target specific alien species while leaving humans unaffected. These are contingency plans, Dr. Morgan emphasized, developed in case humanity faces extinction-level threats. We hope never to implement them. But you could, Commander Zex said. We could, Colonel Patterson confirmed. And if humanity's survival depended on it, we would. As the lights came up at the end of the 4th day, Commander Zex realized he was facing a crisis that extended far beyond his academy. Humanity's application to join the Galactic Alliance was not just a diplomatic matter. It was a fundamental question about the nature of galactic civilization itself. Either they would accept humanity as allies, with all the terrifying implications that entailed, or they would attempt to exclude them and face the consequences of having the galaxy's most advanced military power as a potential enemy. Yith approached Dr. Morgan after the session ended. Doctor, may I ask a personal question? Of course. When you first developed these weapons and strategies, were you afraid of what you were creating? Dr. Morgan was quiet for a long moment. Every human who works in military development lives with that fear every day. We are terrified of our own capabilities, but we are more terrified of being defenseless against those who would harm us or our allies. And now that you seek to join us, now we hope to use those capabilities to protect a larger family, to ensure that the horrors we have seen and inflicted never happen to anyone else. Colonel Patterson joined the conversation. Cadet, The choice before your alliance is simple. You can have humanity as allies, with all the protection that entails. Or you can have us as unknowns, operating independently in the galaxy. But you cannot have us as enemies and expect to survive the experience. Is that a threat? It is a statement of fact. We do not make threats, we make promises. That night, for the first time in the Academy's history, Commander Zex contacted the Galactic Council directly to report that an educational exercise had uncovered information with species-wide security implications. The 5 remaining cadets would complete their viewing, but their reports would be classified at the highest levels of galactic government. The galaxy was about to learn that they had invited something unprecedented into their peaceful community. Tomorrow would bring the final day of footage, and with it, the complete revelation of what humanity represented to the galactic order. On the final day, only 5 cadets remained in the auditorium that had once held 200. Yith sat in the front row, her blue skin pale with strain. Beside her, Nix clutched his datapad with trembling tentacles. Tel's compound eyes tracked nervously between the display and the exit. The 2 remaining cadets, Vex from the warrior Thrakari and Syl from the scholarly Etherian, had survived through sheer stubborn determination. Commander Zex had barely slept. The Galactic Council had sent observers who now sat in the back of the auditorium. Their presence gave the final viewing session an air of historic importance. What had begun as a simple military history lesson had evolved into a moment that would determine humanity's place in galactic civilization. Today we conclude with humanity's current military capabilities, Dr. Morgan announced, and our theoretical frameworks for future warfare development. The footage began with current human fleet capabilities, ships that could cross galactic distances in weeks, weapons that could crack planetary crusts, defensive systems that could withstand the combined firepower of multiple species fleets. The technology was impressive but not unprecedented by galactic standards. What was unprecedented was the scale. How many ships? Commander Zex asked as the footage showed endless lines of human vessels in orbital shipyards. Our current active fleet consists of approximately 50,000 vessels of various classes, Colonel Patterson replied. With production, capacity to double that number within 2 years if needed. The Galactic Alliance's combined fleet numbered roughly 12,000 ships, built over centuries by dozens of species. Humanity had achieved comparable numbers in mere decades since achieving space travel. Your industrial capacity exceeds our entire alliance, observed Counselor Thek from the back of the auditorium. We build things quickly when we need them. Dr. Morgan replied simply. The footage shifted to show human training facilities. Millions of soldiers preparing for conflicts that might never come, practicing tactics against hypothetical alien opponents, learning to fight in environments ranging from gas giants to neutron star surfaces. You maintain standing armies larger than most species' total populations, noted another council observer. We prefer to be prepared, Colonel Patterson said, but it was the footage of human research facilities that finally broke the last cadet's composure. The images showed laboratories where human scientists worked on weapons that could manipulate space-time itself, devices that could trigger stellar collapse, and theoretical frameworks for universe-scale warfare. Universe scale? Yeath's voice was barely a whisper. Theoretical only, Dr. Morgan assured her. But if humanity ever faced an extinction threat from extra-dimensional sources, we have contingency plans. You have planned for wars against entities from other dimensions? We have planned for every possible threat scenario we can imagine, Colonel Patterson confirmed, including ones that do not exist yet. The final segment showed humanity's newest development, integration protocols for alliance technology and human military doctrine. The footage revealed how human strategists had spent years analyzing galactic species capabilities and developing tactical approaches for fighting alongside them or against them. You have studied all of us, Commander Zex realized. Our strengths, our weaknesses, how to defeat us if necessary, and how to protect you, Dr. Morgan added. The protocols work both ways. We have developed defensive strategies for every alliance species against every conceivable threat. The footage concluded with a presentation by human military leadership. officers who had never seen combat but who spoke with the same quiet certainty that had characterized Colonel Patterson throughout the week. They discussed humanity's integration into galactic civilization with the same methodical precision they applied to planning interstellar warfare. As the lights came up for the final time, the 5 surviving cadets sat in stunned silence. They had witnessed a week of footage that had revealed humanity to be simultaneously the most dangerous and most protective species in galactic history. Counselor Theck rose from his seat in the back of the auditorium. Colonel Patterson, Dr. Morgan, we thank you for your educational presentation. We have much to discuss with the full council. Will humanity's application be approved? Colonel Patterson asked directly. That remains to be determined. We must consider whether galactic civilization is ready for humanity's full participation. Dr. Morgan stepped forward. Counselor, may I make an observation? Proceed. You have spent this week learning about humanity's capacity for warfare, but you have missed something crucial. We chose to apply for alliance membership rather than simply taking what we wanted. Everything you have seen, all the capabilities we have demonstrated, we have used them to build rather than to conquer. Since achieving space travel, she continued, humanity has fought only defensive wars. We have protected our colonies, defended our allies, and eliminated threats to civilized species. We have never initiated conflict for territorial gain or resource extraction. Colonel Patterson nodded. We have shown you our weapons, Counselor, but we have not shown you what we have built with them. Protected trade routes, defended refugee populations, eliminated pirates and slavers who preyed on peaceful species. You have shown us what humanity is capable of in war, added Dr. Morgan. But what we hope you will remember is that we chose peace. Yith stood up slowly, her legs shaking. Counselor, may I speak? The floor is yours, Cadet. I have watched 5 days of the most horrifying footage in galactic history. I have seen a species that has perfected warfare to a degree that terrifies me. But I have also seen something else. She turned to face Colonel Patterson and Dr. Morgan. I have seen humans who were clearly traumatized by their own species' capacity for violence, who shared this information not to threaten us, but to help us understand them. I have seen warriors who have clearly fought in these conflicts but who speak of them with regret, not pride. And, she continued, looking back at the council observers, I have seen a species that developed the power to destroy galaxies and chose instead to ask for permission to join ours. Nix raised a tentacle. Counselor, if I may add something, we have seen 5 days of human warfare, but we have spent 3 months with human ambassadors. They helped us repair our systems. They shared their food. They learned our languages and asked about our families. They treated us as equals, even though they could have treated us as subjects. Tell clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The humans could have conquered us before we knew they existed. Their stealth technology, their ship capabilities, their weapons, they could have taken what they wanted by force. Instead, they asked to join us. Vex, the Thrakari warrior, spoke for the first time all week. My people respect strength above all else. Humans possess more strength than all our species combined, yet they use that strength to protect rather than to dominate. This is the mark of true warriors. Syl, the Etherian scholar, added quietly, in all our records, no species has ever voluntarily revealed such devastating capabilities to potential allies. The fact that humans chose transparency over deception suggests they intend to honor their commitments to peace. Counselor Theck looked at his fellow observers, then back at the small group. Cadets, you have experienced something no beings in galactic history have witnessed. You have seen the complete military development of a species that has mastered warfare beyond our comprehension. He paused, considering his words carefully. The question before us is not whether humanity is powerful enough to be useful allies. The question is whether we are brave enough to accept them as partners. Colonel Patterson stepped forward. Counselor, may I offer one final thought? Please. Humanity does not need the Galactic Alliance. We could expand independently, build our own empire, create our own sphere of influence. We have the technology, the industrial capacity, and the military strength to do so. Then why do you seek membership? Dr. Morgan answered. Because we have learned something from our violent history. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the choice to resolve conflict without violence. We cannot make that choice alone. We need partners who share our commitment to building rather than destroying. And if we refuse your application? Colonel Patterson's expression grew serious. Then humanity will respect that decision and withdraw our application. We will continue our independent expansion and development. But we hope, for the sake of galactic civilization, that will not be necessary. The threat was implicit, but clear. Humanity would prefer to join the Alliance as partners, but they would continue to grow stronger whether the Alliance accepted them or not. Better to have them inside the Alliance than operating independently in the galaxy. Counselor Thek nodded. Slowly. Colonel Patterson, Dr. Morgan, you have given us much to consider. The full council will review this information and render a decision within one galactic standard cycle. As the humans and council observers left the auditorium, the 5 surviving cadets sat in silence, processing what they had experienced. What do you think they will decide? Yeath asked quietly. Commander Zex, who had observed the entire week with growing amazement, answered thoughtfully. I think they will approve humanity's application.